Hello, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Judge Lee B. First. I am the former supervising judge of the Workers' Compensation Board for the entire state of New York. And I am also the former president of the Metropolitan Women's Bar Association. I am the daughter of Rabbi Ben Zion Blech, who died, Zichrono Livracha. He died, and I and my family all filled with rabbis. I'm the only one who became a judge. So I am an author also. I wrote this book, Justice is Blonde, the unorthodox story of an Orthodox woman. How you could be Orthodox and still enjoy life, which many people can't. They're so, everything is forbidden. So anyway, I wrote this wonderful book. Now today I have a topic which I think is very interesting, and that is, what is kosher? What do we mean by kosher? What happened? The word kosher has now become part of the American lexicon. If you say the word kosher, what does it mean, kosher? It means fit or proper. Even when you go to a court, you could use that and say, this case is not kosher, which is unbelievable, and the judge will know what you mean. It's not kosher, or this is kosher. So that's part of the American lexicon. What happened? What is meant by kosher? Kosher is the ingredients and the production. It has two elements that makes a product kosher, according to kosher law, which is according to our Bible. There's an oral law which explains exactly what we mean by kosher. In the Bible, there's only one sentence: "Thou shalt not cook the calf in its mother's milk." That means you don't mix milk and meat together. So what is meant by that? But it has a lot of meaning. Oh, it does not. Now, a lot of American people say, oh, this is not kosher. The rabbi didn't bless it. That has nothing to do with it. The rabbi doesn't bless it. It's how it's produced and what it is, in fact. Today, on the shelves in New York, I read somewhere 40% of the foods that are sold are certified kosher, with one of the things, O-U-K, etc., which is a lot. Now, how did this all start? In the 1920s and 30s, the American housewife, they didn't keep kosher anymore. People, they came from Europe, they gave it up. But why didn't they keep kosher? A lot of them would have. But when they went to the supermarket and they read all the ingredients, emulsifier, this, that, they didn't understand what is kosher, which ingredients, this is that. So they went to the OU. The OU is the Union of Orthodox Hebrew Congregations, which takes care of a lot of different fields. Even they have a marriage bureau. They have a lot of stuff going on, and synagogues. And these young women said, we want to be kosher. Would you please open up like a bureau where you will send people to different big companies, factories, and they will check the ingredients, and then you'll put your stamp on it. It's an O and a U in the middle. And that's what they did. And most products, I would say, have an OU. That's a very big kosher certifier. Now, when you go to a supermarket, you don't stand and read the ingredients like we did when we were young. To go shopping was a big chore. You read on every can, everything, what's the ingredient. Now you just look for the stamp kosher and you can buy it. They have supermarkets now where everything in the supermarket is stamped with a kosher insignia. You don't have to bother with anything. You just go, take it. It's a wonderful world. Now, what makes something kosher? The ingredients, of course, have to be kosher. Number two, milk and meat cannot be mixed because we don't eat milk and meat together. And number three, the machines that are used to produce that product have to be koshered in between. If they ever use something else, one use something dairy, and then they want to use meat, they have to do something with the machines, hot water, etc. They know what to do. You can't use one machine for this or for something that's not kosher and then use it for kosher. That'll make it not kosher. Those are the three important things. What is kosher certified? It's the same thing as kosher supervised. Kosher certified means the same thing. It means somebody is in the factory and looks in. That is known as a mashgiach. The watchman, he gets paid, and he can go in sporadically and make sure everything is according to the kosher law. So that's what it is. But we have something which is even more holy and better. They call it le-mahadran. What is meant by that? Like some people only eat le-mahadran certified. That means that a supervisor is all the time in the factory. They're full time, because suppose somebody comes in and works there, eats a non-kosher sandwich and leaves some part of it around. That doesn't happen if it's le-mahadran. That's a very, very kosher thing. Now, if you go to a supermarket and you see a product, maybe by Kraft, so I've seen a lot of them, they have the letter K. That means absolutely nothing, because many people of you might think K is kosher. It means the company thinks it's kosher. The company doesn't know anything. They want to sell the product, K. Just disregard it. But they have to have a rabbi's name under it, K, and then there's a rabbi, which is supposed to mean that this rabbi watches it and that it's kosher. They want to do that. So what has been known to happen, they take a fictitious name. The company just puts a rabbi's name down, Rabbi Cohen. So the person who buys it might think it's kosher because they didn't swear by it. They don't have a trademark. They just say Rabbi Cohen K. So people might think, but it means absolutely nothing. Also, they can take a real rabbi's name who gets paid and he doesn't care what they put in. They have been known to be rabbis who have done that, which I know you will not believe, but that's what happened. Now, today, if you want to know if something is kosher, it has to have a kosher symbol, a triangle and a K, or whatever. They have so many of them now. They have all different kosher symbols, which are trademarks, and then you can trust them. Also, the mahadran, when something is very kosher, like I said, then they use the milk, which is certified kosher. Because what happened is with the milk, in the 1920, 30, they had Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, they had people, and they were asked, are we allowed to drink the milk in America? And the answer was, yes, we are, believe it or not, because in America there's a law. All milk must come from cows, and therefore, like in Europe, you don't drink the milk, because milk can come from pigs and camels, etc., so you cannot drink the milk unless it's certified kosher. But in America, they have such a law that the milk is kosher. So all of us, modern Orthodox people, always drank the milk. Until after World War II, there came many very religious survivors of the Holocaust. They decided, now we're going to make very kosher milk, where somebody watches while they milk the cow and watches while the production, and they call it Chalav Yisrael. They call it, this is real kosher milk. So people who want to be more religious, they do buy that kosher milk. Of course, they pay extra, and then they don't eat any product, dairy, unless it's made with the kosher milk. But most people in America, we still eat regular milk. By the way, butter does not have to be marked kosher, because butter can only come from cow's milk. All other milks do not make butter, which is interesting to know. So that's one thing, you don't have to go. But they still have kosher butter, because they feel better, people feel better, it has a kosher stamp, we are kosher, so they like to do that. Now, we have three categories, as I said, meat, dairy, and parve. Parve is a category that is neither meat nor dairy. But if you go in, a product is, they say to you, it's parve, then in the factory they cannot use the utensils that have been used for meat or dairy. Once they use the same utensils, then let's say they use a dairy utensil, then they have to mark the product dairy, just because of the utensils. So now they have a new category. Now if you ever go to the supermarket, they say parve, and then they say that it's a dairy utensils have been used, which I know in your house when you're cooking, etc., if you're cooking and you're using no milk products at all, but you could be using your dairy dishes. That doesn't make it dairy in your house, but when you want to sell it as a product, they have to call it dairy. Because in your house, you have two sets of dishes. One is for meat, and one is for dairy. You do not have a whole set of dishes or pots for parve. Most people don't. You don't have to go that far. But today, in the industry, they do go that far. Now, what happened with the dairy industry is very interesting. When the farmers made an agreement, and the farmers made an agreement with the government that they will sell milk to the government, and the milk has to be sold at a certain price. So therefore, the American government does not import milk from Europe. Only American milk is allowed to be sold. So when the farmers in Europe said, we want to sell milk to America. In America, when there's too much milk around, the farmers can even throw it away. They can even pour it out because they don't want to have an overabundance of milk. They don't want that. They want to have milk only the American farmer can sell the milk. What happened is the European farmers decided they want to sell the milk to America. So they made dried milk. They took the water out of the milk, they made powdered milks, all kinds of things out of powdered milk, and they sold it to America as products, not as milk, like cream, powdered that you put in your coffee, a lot of things. Now this product has a stamp on it, non-dairy. If you go to the supermarket, it says non-dairy. And it was allowed to be sold as non-dairy in America, so that the American housewife who was not knowledgeable would take that non-dairy product and mix it with meat, because they didn't know that it had, doesn't mean anything non-dairy. That those products are really dairy. They're made out of powdered milk. This went on for many, many years until maybe 1990 or 1980. There was a doctor, he went to Washington, and he told the administration that many people are allergic to milk, so they can't drink milk. And they go and they buy these products which say non-dairy on it, and they die. You can actually die if you're allergic to milk. So why should the product say non-dairy? It's not fair for them. So the government agreed. Now when you see those products, they still big stamp non-dairy. In small letters, it says contains milk derivative, which is so ridiculous. We should all know that those things are dairy, and the kosher housewife, of course, knows that those things are dairy. We all know that. But many people are in between. They want to have a kosher house. They didn't hear this lecture, so they don't know that they can't use those things that come from Europe. Also, the kosher status of milk is dependent on the kosher status of the animal. For instance, the pig, all those people you can't have. Now, what is a kosher? What is kosher meat? A kosher animal is one that has a split hoof and chews the cud. It chews the food twice. Those are the kosher animals. And fish has to have scales on it. And with regard to insects, they're not kosher. I mean, the insects, all those other fish that we can't eat, make believe. Cows, sheep, and goats are kosher, and their milk is kosher. Now there came a problem now where they make milk for slim, no fat milk, those other milks. They added vitamin A and vitamin D to it because they took out the fat-free milk. So now the problem is, are those vitamins that are added, are they kosher? Now there's a whole different vitamin industry, which I'm not going into, which vitamins are kosher and which are not kosher. And like before 1950, they didn't have kosher vitamins. My friend's family, they were druggists, so they said, look at this is not kosher. So they opened a very big kosher vitamin business. Just maybe in the late 40s, I remember when they did that. Today that industry is very big, and people only eat kosher vitamins, even if the vitamins are kosher. The gel caps, what's outside is not kosher. There can be a million things, you see. Now, fresh dairy cream is always kosher, can only be kosher. So that's the dairy industry, which I find very interesting. How about bread? Bread is made from flour, water, and yeast. Yeast is always kosher. So bread generally was always kosher. The law, according to Jewish law, is that bread has to be parve. It cannot be dairy and it cannot be with meat. Because if we have dairy bread that we sell, then we might eat it with our meal. Bread is the mainstay of everyone's life. People always eat bread, so they might not be careful enough to know that, God said to Adam, by the sweat of your brow you will eat your bread. Because bread is something we have to eat. Now what happens with today, there are a lot of fancy breads that are dairy, or they even have additives to it, not just the basics, so we should be careful with bread. People eat only kosher bread. In Europe, the bread is not kosher. They add fat, or they put fat in pig lard into the pan where they bake it. There are a lot of things that can that can make it not kosher, even though essentially it is kosher. How about candy? Candy, sugar and water candy. That used to be, we always thought it was kosher, but now they have so many additives, like gelatin. Gelatin is not kosher, but there was a company, a rabbi, and they say they put a kosher insignia on gelatin, so now some people might think gelatin is kosher. It's not kosher. But there is the co-gel, or there is a kosher gelatin, which also is not strictly kosher, because gelatin comes from the bone marrow of animals. So we don't, in my family, we don't consider it kosher, even if it says co-gel. Gelatin is not a kosher. So many candies have gelatin, so we have to be very careful most authorities don't accept gelatin as kosher, because that holds it together. How about canned goods? Canned goods is very interesting because Napoleon wanted to feed his army. He said a good army has to be on a full stomach. He was the first to say that. So he wanted to have good food for them. This was the year 1809. So there was one man, and he invented canning. Canning. What was his name? He put fruits and vegetables and meat into a glass jar, and he sealed it very tight, and then he shipped it out to the army. This was preserved food. But his name was Mr. Appert, A-P-P-E-R-T, and he did this thing, and the army then had food. But he didn't understand why it worked, but he invented it. He worked on it for 12 years, I think. What happened after that? Louis Pasteur in 1810, he explained why this works. He figured it out. And then began the canning industry, which is a miracle. Louis Pasteur said the heat sterilizes it, etc., the product. The can, instead of a glass jar, they said it was better to put it in a can you know, but they didn't really do everything so perfect as we do it today. And they say more people died in the army from that food, from the poisoned food, because it wasn't canned properly, than they died in the war. That's what it says. More American soldiers died during the Spanish-American War from the faulty cans. Botulism is what you get. If the can is not done properly, you get botulism. Today we have vegetable cans, food cans, you know. So what is today? When we came in 1941, I came to America, we bought all the canned vegetable food because it was just the vegetable and water or whatever. But now they say even a can can be not kosher because they can have additives. They can add like little bouillon cubes, make it more flavorful. Or the machines that they use to can be not kosher. If the machines were used for meat or meat soups, etc., which was not kosher in the same factory, then of course the product is not kosher, even though all the ingredients are kosher. Now the canning industry is seasonal because they only can these fruits of this season, these vegetables then, so at certain times they don't have anything to can. So the company does not want the machines to be idle, so they start canning non-kosher products in the same machines. So people today do buy kosher cans, kosher vegetable cans, because that's how it is. Also, we who are Orthodox and kosher are not allowed to eat insects. There are many people, those big hotels, that won't even serve lettuce. In Israel, you don't get lettuce. But now they invented lettuce that cannot have bugs. I don't know how that works, but you buy bugless lettuce. But in Israel, I never ate spinach because they're afraid they have bugs. So if you're going to buy cans from a canning company, they don't have a person there like a mashgiach looking if they're bugs. So bugs can get into the vegetable cans. I guess it can. So you should buy kosher cans. How about cheese? Is cheese kosher? Now the cheese industry is a big industry. And how does the cheese get hard? And by something called rennet. Rennet is something taken from the lining of an animal before the baby animal that's in the stomach, the lining of the stomach of the baby animal, that is rennet. So they decided, since it's 1 to 1,000th proportion of this meat product with the cheese, we can't use it. But rennet can only be used if it's from a kosher animal, from the lining of a kosher animal's stomach. That's when we use rennet. Even though it's a meat product, you're allowed to make the cheese out of it. So of course, the cheese until recently was not kosher because they used rennet to make hard cheese. I'm only talking about hard cheese. So what happened then? It became so cumbersome to get rennet, even for all the companies, that they made out of chemicals, a rennet, which is the greatest miracle. Now the hard cheeses, they don't have rennet, they have this chemical, which is kosher. But some people still don't eat hard cheese unless it's kosher, because they don't trust the people who make this cheese, whether they use rennet or not. Now in Europe, I was told in Italy, in certain products, they still put rennet. Why? Because they want to be authentic. We use rennet. So you still have to be careful if you're going to use cheese, whether it should, but most cheeses probably are kosher because they use the chemical. Now in Jewish law, if let's say 1 drop of dairy drops into a meat, and it's 1/60th the proportion, then it doesn't make it dairy. We're allowed to have a mistake of 1/60th. So rennet is 1,000th proportion of the cheese. So therefore, most of the cheese today is kosher. They say that if you eat cheese, you should wait 6 hours, hard cheese, before you eat meat. Cheese is a heavy dairy, doesn't dissolve so fast inside you, but most people don't adhere to that. Between eating a dairy product and eating meat, you have to wait nothing. You just wash out your mouth and you brush your teeth, wash out your mouth, wait 5 minutes, and then you can eat meat. But for meat to dairy, most people wait 6 full hours. Some people wait 5 hours. We from Switzerland wait 3 hours. But in Holland, they only wait 1 hour because our Bible does not tell you how long you must wait. They don't tell you. It just say, don't eat it together. So we are so stringent that we have to always add on to it and make it strict. My children all wait 6 hours. I wait 3 hours. Otherwise, I would never eat meat because you can't eat anything dairy for all that period. Your day is shot. How about chewing gum? Is that kosher? What is the kosher status of chewing gum? Synthetic rubber. This was invented in the New World. They found synthetic rubber, which was unbelievable. Latex sap from a tree. Of course, that's kosher. The Mexican leader Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna, he lost Texas to the United States, but he gave us chewing gum. The United States loves chewing gum. In 1867 is when they invented chewing gum. And it came from the trees and it was allowed to be eaten, didn't have to be kosher. During World War II, the United States could not get any more of that rubber. Blockades with Germany and all that. So guess what happened? The United States invented synthetic rubber, which is the greatest miracle because they needed it for the war. Now, this synthetic rubber is kosher, and they want to make chewing gum, which is so popular. They add glycerin to it, which is not kosher. Or they can add emulsifiers and they can add fats to it, which can be not kosher. Therefore, it's in very small proportions. Like I said, 1 to 60th, you could still, like 1 to 1,000 you could eat. 1 to 60th, you could make it from dairy to meat. Very small proportions, but they feel that some chewing gums could have some flavors, different fats, etc. Therefore, you're better off eating kosher chewing gum. Also, the equipment that makes synthetic rubber does not have to be kosherized because the synthetic rubber is only made out of chemicals. I hope you learned a lot today, as I did, and thank you for listening.